Just this first lick right here. So there's so much just in that first lick. He does this little lick here where he plays this little pattern. All the scales are constantly going to be pulling back towards the blues. The essence of blues and rock really revolves around this interplay between major chords and then minor scales or minor pentatonic scales. That doesn't mean that you just should get stuck in a rut. In fact, the greatest guitar players, they roam all over the place. But the thing is, they masterfully weave back towards that quintessential blues sound, which is that sound that's hidden within those scales. So I mean, if you go back to the beginning of blues music, it all started with this mystery of like playing minor melodies over major chords. And that's something that really technically shouldn't even work, but the sound itself is just beautiful, it's magical, and that tonality is really the basis for blues music, rock music, jazz music. So that is why the basic pentatonic scale is the foundation of so much music. So the thing is, you want to think of scales not as these closed systems where you use this scale, then use this scale, but think of it more like a palette of colors that you can kind of superimpose over the top of that foundational blues tonality. So when you're improvising, you're not just kind of going up and down these scales, but you're painting with these sounds and with these patterns, and you can create all these different types of colors. And the real magic happens when you start to really mix these patterns together effortlessly with phrasing and rhythm and dynamics. So that's what we're going to go through today. So we're going to explore 4 of the essential scales. I'm kind of going from easy to complex, right? I'll show you how to blend these together to create that soulful blues sound that actually sounds good. So I'm going to cover 4 scales. First of all, the major pentatonic scale, the blues scale, the mixolydian scale and the modes, and then the diminished scale. And I'm going to put them all in the context of this idea that all those scales are constantly going to be pulling back towards the blues and pulling back towards that basic tonality. So think of it like we're going to add another dimension to what you're already using, what you already know, what you already play. Okay, so let's start with the major pentatonic scale. And it's somewhat underused, but it's really a fantastic sound. I think it's really one of the keys to actually being able to sound really good at any level, you know. I mean, just think about stuff like Hideaway. You know, it's just got such a cool sound. So let's look at one of the masters of the major pentatonic scale. First of all, B.B. King. So just check this out, this is fantastic. Just this first lick right here. So there's so much just in that first lick, you know. He starts like... So he starts off in the major pentatonic scale, and he's just going to walk up. You know, each note really is telling a story, which is the way he attacks the notes. And then he's getting to this note here with the third finger, which is a major note, so the major second, but he's bending it up towards that blues scale, towards that minor third. And he's kind of like not quite getting all the way to the major third, it's kind of in between. And that's one of the secrets with the blues, is it's just those kind of in-between tonalities. And then he's landing on that root, and just that amazing vibrato that he's got, where he's hitting that root there, and he's doing that kind of butterfly vibrato. And then he just like literally falls back down the minor pentatonic scale. You know, so cool. So he's going from the major to the minor. So let's take a look at the basic major. So if you look on the screen here, we've got just the major pentatonic scale, which will be like this. We'll go back to the key of G. You know, and all these, like a great song to jam on for something like this would be Stormy Monday, because that's a great song where you can go from minor to major, and you can use all of these different things that we're going to talk about. It's a great song to learn to jam on. So here's the basic scale. So that's what you want to really get under your fingertips. And if we're in G, what the idea is you're basically superimposing that pattern over the top of this. So here's your basic minor. And over the top of that, you're giving... Now, a lot of times when you're doing that, because a lot of the melodic sounds on the guitar are going to be more in this neck of the woods, right? In this area on the neck. So you might not necessarily be playing so many notes down here in the bass notes, because they're going to clash more. But there's a real sweetness to the guitar right here. for soloing. So B.B. King's playing right here. Now, one of the other things that B.B. King's really known for as well is taking those same notes, the major pentatonic scale, but he actually plays it up here. And it's so famous, him doing that, it's actually called the BB box. And it's kind of when you get these kind of sounds like... And right there, the BB box is the perfect example of how BB King does this exact thing. Because these notes here, it's actually the same shape as down here. We're starting with the root note right there. Though the notes that he's accessing there, especially by doing these little bends and stuff, are a perfect blending of the major and minor pentatonic scales in one position. So you start off right here, you've got your root, and then you go up to your major second, and then if you do a little bend here, that gives you your minor third from the blues. And then if you bend out further, it takes you to the major. And he would just get a lot of action just out of that one position. And even bending right up. Okay, so let's take a look at another exponent of the major pentatonic scale, and that's Dickie Betts. Dickie Betts was an amazing guitar player, and here he is playing Jessica. Just check out how cool this solo is, and he often used the major pentatonic scale. So that lick right there, like he's playing over a D chord. Now he does this little lick here in the major pentatonic scale, which is this one, where he plays this little kind of 6-note pattern. And that's kind of his signature lick, is basically where he'd walk up the scale and do this hammer, and then cross back over like that, and do this little kind of flick. So it's a hammer, and then a kind of an accent where you flat your finger there. And you can move that all over the guitar. And he would just kind of move back and forth using that little shape. So with the major pentatonic, there's all these kind of cool little runs that you can use like that. And I actually did another video about it, which I'll link to right here, where I talked about this idea with a major pentatonic scale. Then there's this really cool pattern that you can use that a lot of players use, which is just this little 5-note pattern like this. And then it repeats, and then it repeats. So it makes this great run, which is really cool. Okay, so that's the first one, the major pentatonic scale. It's great, and when you combine it with the blues scale, it's fantastic. Okay, so let's get into the next one. The next one is the blues scale, which is just a variation of the minor pentatonic scale, but it changes the sound so much just to add that one extra note in there, which is the flat 5. And it sounds like this. So if you look on the screen there's your scale. And then basically if you walk down that scale, you can just even playing through the scale, it's got such a cool sound because of that flat 5 in there. So a lot of players use that sound, and it's blues, jazz, all over the place. It's a great sound. I mean, check out Stevie Ray Vaughan using that sound right here. When he would, like on something like Little Wing, when he would do that. All right, so let's get into the next one. So the next one's the Mixolydian scale. And the Mixolydian scale, it's one of the modes, right? And they're basically where you take the major scale and you can play 7 different inversions of that scale. So the Mixolydian mode is based on the 5th degree of the major scale. So what that means is it fits perfectly over dominant chords, over 7th chords. And really the blues is actually all about 7th chords. They're not really actually even major chords, they're dominant 7th chords. So all the time when you're playing a blues song, in essence a minor blues, you're basically playing a modulation of dominant 7 chords, going from a G7, for example, the key of G, to a C7 or a C9 and a D7. So the blues is really like where you're actually modulating through different dominant chords. So the perfect mode for that is the Mixolydian scale, which sounds like this if you look on the screen. And then backwards, and then back down. Now, the sound of that scale is like, I mean, think, for example, D Mixolydian. You know, it's like the Beatles used that scale a lot. You'd hear it in a Leonard Skinner song, you'd hear it in a Jeff Beck song. In fact, here's Jeff Beck. This is Freeway Jam, Jeff Beck. So that's a really good example of a Mixolydian melody. And the thing that really gives it its flavor is that flat 7. So it's like a major scale, but with a flat 7 in there. And that really gives it that kind of rock sound. You know, also think, for example, Sweet Child of Mine. That's the Mixolydian sound right there. It's kind of got this kind of mysterious sound to it. But here's the real magic. If you superimpose that on top of a minor pentatonic scale, it gives you this kind of sound here. So here's the minor pentatonic scale. And here's the Mixolydian. And if you mix those together, you get these kind of licks. So that's kind of like a Mixolydian blues sound. And what you got there is the best of both worlds. You've got the minor third of the minor pentatonic, and then you've got the major third as well. So it has a really fantastic sound. All right, and the last one is the diminished scale. So in the key of G, when you're playing blues or jazz, you use what's called the half-whole diminished scale. So if you start on a G note, it looks like this. And then it's kind of an easy one to remember because you play it like this, it's kind of symmetrical. If I go down and start on the flat 7 here on my first finger on the 4th string, the fingering's going to be 1 3 4 1 2 4 1 3 4 1 2 4. So it's like this. So it's kind of an easy one to remember. Now, the theory behind why that scale uses, this is the most outside one of all the scales, and it kind of gives you much more of that kind of jazzy sound. And the theory behind how this scale works is basically when you're playing a dominant 7 chord, a simple addition you can make to that chord is to play what's called a 7 flat 9 chord. So that's basically where you play a G7 and then you add a flat 9 on top. And a flat 9 would be like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, but it's the flattened 9, so it's this note here. So it's a half step above the root. So if I take a G7 chord like this, and then just add that flat 9 on top, it's this chord here. Now if you know your chords, you'll know that that is actually also the same thing as a diminished shape. So one of the rules that you can remember is basically a G7 flat 9 chord is also the same as a G sharp diminished chord. So a G7 flat 9 or a G sharp diminished are the same chord, right? So therefore you can use them synonymously over each other. So basically there's a lot of kind of mystery to the diminished scales, but here's a really simple way to kind of break it down. So let's say, for example, if I'm in the key of A, and we're going to play an A blues. So we've got A7, D7, and E7. So all I'm going to do is over the A7 chord, I'm going to play A7 flat 9 chord, which is also an A sharp diminished. Or you could say B flat diminished. So here's the sound of that. I'm going to play it as an arpeggio first, and then we can make it into a scale. But the basic arpeggio is like this. So there's the chord. Think of it as a chord first, and then you can extend it into an arpeggio. Diminished chords are made up from stacked minor thirds. Now, so if I use that sound over the A7, I can do the same thing over the D7, and then the same thing over the E7. So you've got now one of the other things that's cool about diminished chords is because it's stacked minor thirds, there's only actually 3 diminished chords and then they repeat. So if I play like that, if I go up 3 frets and do the same thing, that's actually the same notes again, but just an inversion of it. And if you think of it like this, in music, there's only 12 notes in music in the chromatic scale. So when you play 4 of them like this, if I go to the next position here, that's another 4. And then if I go to the next position, that's another 4. And then that's all the notes in the chromatic scale, all covered. So here's a way that you can play a diminished arpeggio in blues. Is when you're playing over the 1 chord, you can use this shape. When you're playing over the 4 chord, just go back a half step. And then when you're playing over the 5 chord, go up a half step. And that gives you the same sound as going. And then, so basically, this is kind of how it would sound. I'm just going to kind of over-exaggerate it a bit here, but say if I'm playing kind of a slow blues. Move down a half step. Up half step. So you see, all I'm doing is playing over the A, I'm doing this shape. Over the D, I'm doing this shape. And over the E, I'm doing this shape. So that's a cool little simple trick for playing those diminished shapes. And it sounds particularly really good when you use over the 4 chord. When you put that diminished shape over there, that D7 flat 9 shape. So if you're playing blues in A, now once you can do that, you can expand it a little bit further by not just playing the arpeggio. You can actually play the full scale. So right here. And it gives you more of that kind of outside sound. Now, if you're playing kind of jazz stuff, or if you're playing kind of bluesy jazz, it sounds really good, especially if you're kind of using a clean kind of jazzy sound. If you're playing gut bucket blues, and it's just going to sound weird if you I mean, people like Robin Ford and, you know, John Coltrane can do it and stuff, but for mere mortals, it's just kind of a weird sound. But it sounds great if you use it really sparingly. And a good way to even think about that is it's kind of like going. So there, you can see there, like when I'm just going up a half step and then resolving it. That's the same kind of idea. So you can play kind of a basic blues lick like. And you see there, I just kind of like played a little 3-note diminished and then resolved it to the next chord. So that's the kind of way you can use it in a blues. It's just like throwing a little bit of spice in there. You know, so you use it very sparingly and it sounds awesome. You know, I mean, kind of like. You know, you can make some interesting sounding licks and just kind of superimpose that over that pentatonic scale. You know, and then you get shredders like Yngwie Malmsteen, who they'll typically be playing in a minor key, and the rule there is you just go down a half step. So say if you're in the key of A minor, just go down to a G sharp. And it's a good way to kind of, and it works over a major or minor. So basically, if you want to kind of get that resolution sound at the end of a song, resolves like that. So that's kind of some fun you can have. Just the diminished scale is very symmetrical. It's very mysterious. You can kind of get obsessed with it and go into this world of diminished madness, which is really cool. But it's also something you have to kind of use sparingly, otherwise you kind of start sounding a bit weird. All right, so there you have it. There's 4 scales you can use, and basically the idea is just kind of go through. There's the tabs right there. They'll go through these 4 scales, and then the last one. And then just, the idea is what you put in is what you get out, So if you get those really well programmed into your muscle memory, then next time you're playing Stormy Monday or some kind of amazing kind of blues song, you can just use your regular old pentatonics, but then throw in a little bit of BB or some Jeff Beck. Or a little bit of that diminished spiciness. So hope you have fun with this. Hopefully you'll be able to take some of these ideas and incorporate them in your playing. And if you like this, so thanks for watching. Let me know which scale that you found the most intriguing, and if you have any success with it in your practice sessions. And until next time, don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. And remember, turn it up.